Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon. In this double murder of Spencer and Monique Tepe, I think we got to realize that detectives are on this case and they're working it hard. And I see a lot of media people, YouTube content creators, just making things up. And you know something? I think we need to stick with the facts here, and come to the realization that the people investigating this case are professionals and they know what they are doing. They absolutely 100% know what they're doing. So, does something not add up in this case? What is that? What is it that's not adding up? Well, the crime scene screams at us. It screams that this perpetrator or perpetrators in this case is known to the victims. And that has sort of been said from day one, from December 30th. The fact that the crime scene didn't show signs of ransacking, did not show signs of a robbery, and there was no forced entry. And right away, right from the early onset, the earliest onset of this case, it was determined by investigators that this was not a murder suicide. It would have been easy for investigators to say this was a murder suicide, except the one thing that is sort of a qualification there to have a murder suicide is that the murder weapon must be on the scene, and the murder weapon was gone. So right away, and there's other ways to see if it was a murder suicide. Uh, Gun near the proximity of the shooter or in the shooter's hand, gunshot residue, all of those type of things. So it was determined early on, and the fact that there was no forced entry, and the fact that the police, right till now, are not telling us where the perpetrator entered this house. And disturbing to me too, that there's very limited video of anyone in this case, of course, except that person of interest who is being called. That's the only person they're saying, that person of interest who we've all seen the video numerous times of the person of interest. And on this thumbnail, you could see it's not the greatest thumbnail. It's also not the greatest video. Out of all the homes and all the alleyways and all the cameras, that's all they have right now is that little bit of video of a person who they are claiming to be a person of interest. And some people are disturbed by that title, person of interest. No one's calling him a suspect. They're calling him a person of interest. And the reason they put out this video is to garner the help of the public, of the community. Does that mean that the investigators have nothing? There's an old adage in homicide investigation. When you hit a brick wall, and I'm not saying the detectives have, I firmly believe that they are on the right track and they have a direction in this case. I'm not making anything up. I've heard other people say, is this a professional hitman? Where the hell are they getting this stuff from? Right? Is this a professional hitman? No, I don't believe it is. Again, there's numerous reasons why that is not a potentiality. There was spent shells left on the floor, wasn't there? Would a professional, if there is such a thing as a professional hitman, who's a professional hitman? Mobsters? They're not, they're so unprofessional, it's unbelievable. They just happen to kill each other. That's why they don't get caught as often. And no one testifies against them. But this is not a professional. But the crime scene does scream out that it's a known to, that whoever did this is known to the victims. And that is why I feel that, and I've said it a million times, and some of you folks that follow this show may even get tired of me saying it, that the answer to this case is in the victimology, is in the study of the victims, the background of the victims, victim profiling, if you will. That is where the answer is. And these two beautiful people, somehow they were targeted. They were targeted, and again, early on, no one wanted to use the term home invasion. I don't believe this is a home invasion. I believe the person that got into this home either knew the code or was invited in. So those are things that investigators are looking at, and they're following the investigative leads they have. They are following a natural direction in which the evidence takes them. And many people who covered this case, they're getting really antsy. But this is the nature of homicide investigation. You don't get the answers immediately, right? You definitely do not get the answers immediately. You have to work at it. So, a quick reminder, if you're looking for real crime insight, not YouTube theories, this channel is different. I'm a retired NYPD sergeant, and on Police Off the Cuff, we analyze cases the way cops and prosecutors do. What matters, what doesn't, and what the internet gets wrong. If that's the perspective you want, subscribe now, because this isn't entertainment, it's experience. So we're going to go through this. And, every day you hear people saying, oh, smoking gun evidence. There's nothing really brand new on this case. There are different ways to look at the evidence. There are different ways to analyze it, but there's no smoking gun right now. This is what you call gumshoe work. Detectives getting out there, pounding the pavement, and finding out through talking to people, through interviewing people. And also, I speak about investigation being an art and a science. The science will come into this case and maybe give them the answer, but definitely assist detectives in getting an answer. And that's what we're hoping, that the assistance will come from the science of investigation. Folks, just so you know, this show, Police Off the Cuff, is sponsored by FanDuel on the Believe Network. So, folks, hold on to your hats, hold on to your loved ones, hold on to your service dog, hold on to your thoughts, hold on to your prayers. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the Off the Cuff zone, the Police Off the Cuff zone. There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
Some of the facts that we know about this case, and you got to, sometimes, as I said, when investigators hit a brick wall, they'll start over. They'll start from the beginning. They'll re-interview. They'll re-canvass. And I really felt from the early onset of this case that they would find more video of a person of interest, possibly of the person that is the killer in this case. So far, all we have is that grainy video that does not show the perpetrator's face because, first of all, he's not listed as the perpetrator. He is considered to be a person of interest, someone that the police want to talk to, right? So what happened? We still know, but we know both Spencer and Monique Tepe were murdered, and the incident occurred inside their home. The case is active and ongoing, and no suspect has been named. What police have not confirmed is just as important: cause and manner of death, right? So the manner of death, of course, is a homicide, and the cause of death is a gunshot wound. And what was left behind, besides other evidence that we are not privy to, is ballistic evidence. 3 spent shells, reportedly, of a 9mm variety, right? And that you're looking at the firing pin impression on a spent shell, spent casing. And that is unique to the firearm. So I had mentioned on numerous shows that this information can identify the firearm that it was fired from. If this gun was used in any other crimes, they will put the brass into a machine called a brass catcher, and then it would go into a database that can identify the brass, right? and it can identify the gun if the gun was ever used in any other shooting. So, another thing that we don't know is we don't specifically know the time of death. The police gave a timeline of 0200 by 0500 for those non-military time astute. That is very simple. It's 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. But I think there could be a much narrower time frame than that, and using science. The bodies would have been examined on the scene, including taking the temperature, which is not all that accurate in regards to time of death, and can maybe within an hour to 2 hours pinpoint the time of death. Then there's, of course, rigor mortis, and all those things must be predicted by a medical legal investigator. And it's not, the science is not that accurate. You know what would have been really, really accurate? If someone would have called 911 and said, I hear gunshots, that would almost give us a to the minute time frame of when these murders occurred. But there was no such call. Again, conjecturing. What does that tell us then? People are conjecturing that maybe the shooter used a silencer or some type of other muffling device, because no one called 911 and at least 3 shots were fired. So we can conjecture there that some type of muffling device was used. And then how did the perpetrator get there? And we all watch, and I'll play it again. We all watched the video of the perpetrator walking in that alleyway near the house. And that, didn't tell us a great deal, but it told us something about the perpetrator, about if that in fact is, again, I don't want to assume we're using the language person of interest. And that's all we can really say, because they can't say this person is the perp. They cannot say that. So I'm going to play that video, which you've seen a million times, which is right now the best evidence they have in regards to the potentiality of who this is. So let's play it again.
Captured around that time frame, asking the public for tips about this person of interest walking in the alley near the Tepe's residence.
Based on how the person is walking, the clothing they have on, it's a great lead that you can work and see if you can take it.
This is some old FBI agent. It's a lead in regards to if someone from the community that watches this can identify this person of interest. But right now, all it is someone walking in an alleyway, and it's not very clear. It's dark. He's got a hoodie up. He's got his hands in his pockets. He's got some kind of boots on, right? But there's a specific gait that's spelled G-A-I-T, not G-A-T-E. G-A-I-T, and that specifically talks about the way a person moves, the way they walk. So is there a potential that someone that knows this individual can call the police tips line and say, that's so-and-so? I know that walk anywhere. Let's play it again.
Video captured around that time frame, asking the public for tips about this person of interest walking in the alley near the Tepe's residence.
Based on how the person is walking.
So, when it's sort of amusing to me that on the internet and on the TV stations, you get all these talking heads. Some of them know what they're talking about. Some of them don't have a clue. And I don't know where the TV stations get some of these people. First of all, since when is CIA agents investigating murders? They don't, but yet they're all over the place, And, that's not really the forte of the FBI either. Local police investigate probably 10 times more murders than the alphabet units of the federal government. So they're all conjecturing, but look, if anything helps here, if this video helps, if someone recognizes this person of interest, then it's great evidence, isn't it? It's outstanding evidence. If someone can identify the person in that video. Yes, and we've seen it a million times now, haven't we? We've seen it a million times. So it's important. I think it's very important that we show this video because someone knows this person. Someone knows this guy. And has he been in the Tepe's home before? Does he potentially have the code at the front door, since their lock at the front door is a numerical lock where you can punch in numbers and the lock will open? This is ABC News.
Dentist and his wife. The two found dead in their home last week while their children were in another room. Tonight, police in Columbus releasing this surveillance video. Take a close look. They say that shows a person of interest in the case. I want to get right over to NBC's George Solis, who's been following this one for us tonight. George, what more do we know about what police say this video shows? And we're also hearing from the coroner in this case.
Yeah, that's right, Tom. Authorities in Columbus, Ohio, just releasing this surveillance video of an individual they describe as a person of interest in the murder of Spencer and Monique Tepe. Now, police says the video shows this person of interest walking in an alley near the Tepe residence around the same time frame the couple was murdered back on December 30th between 2 and 5 a.m. That's important because that window was narrowed down from the original midnight to 9 a.m. time frame. Now, according to investigators, the couple was found shot to death in their home during a welfare check after Spencer's coworkers said he didn't show up for work. The family confirming to NBC News their 1- and 4-year-old was found unharmed in another room in the home. Now, according to NBC Chicago tonight, the coroner's office said the pair died from an apparent homicide but gunshot wounds, but that a final determination has not been made. Authorities say they found 3 spent 9mm casings at the scene and no signs of forced entry. Now, this new video, Tom, comes as police has urged the community for any information, including video. And with little details to go on, the case has been a deepening and disturbing mystery. The couple who had been married at the same home described as great people and amazing parents. A memorial of flowers has also been growing outside the couple's home.
So again, the public, I would think that if you lived in that neighborhood, yeah, you might be a little nervous that there is still a killer out there. But it seems that more people are losing it from the media that, you know, this is 9 days. This is the 9th day since it occurred. Why is there no arrest? We heard the same thing in the Brian Koberger case, the same exact thing that in that case, 6 weeks went by before they had arrested Brian Koberger. And everyone, all the media was saying, is this a cold case? The media has never investigated a murder before. So they love to throw shit into the game. Is this a cold case? They made an arrest in that case, didn't they? 6 weeks after it occurred. And just think of a quadruple murder, how nervous everyone was about a quadruple murder not being solved in 6 weeks of 4 college students. Crazy, right? There was also a 911 call that had come from the house. I think it was back in April 15th of 2025. And there was concern that that was Spencer and Monique Tepe. That was a domestic violence case. However, the family was interviewed and they heard the 911 call and they said, that is not Monique's voice. So then who was that? And who was staying at the Tepe's home that had a domestic violence issue? You know, one of the investigative checks that police do, of course, is a complaint report check on both the address and the individuals that live at that address. So were there any complaint reports generated from the address of the murder? That can tell you a lot. Were there any complaint reports in the name of Spencer Tepe or Monique Tepe? And apparently there is not, or that would be all over the news. Trust me. This is the 911 call that everyone is so upset about.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm okay.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm okay. Sorry.
Okay, well, it sounds like you're crying. Do you need police, paramedics, or anything?
No, I'm okay. I promise. I'm just emotional.
The mystery caller turns out to be a party guest who was fighting with her own partner, not with Monique Tepe. Spencer Tepe's brother-in-law confirms that and also says that the couple hosted a lot of parties like to have people over, like to have parties at their house. Spencer and Monique's bodies were discovered last week when coworkers got very concerned and stopped by their home even to do a wellness check.
So we know this case was generated by a wellness check. One of the, of course, investigative checklist things is to interview on a case like this the 911 callers. However, there was no 911 caller that brought the police to this scene, except, let me qualify that, when people that worked with Spencer called their boss, who called from Florida, that he was concerned that Spencer didn't show up for work. And because he was so squared away and so on time and so meticulous, they were concerned that he didn't show up for work on time. Some people take that as a red flag that his boss called from Florida. Obviously, his boss must have been alerted to the fact that Spencer didn't show up for work by other employees at the dental clinic. But some people are raised up, well, why is he calling? You know? And all of this stuff, again, comes back to victimology. Victimology, the study of the victim. And in this case, the study of the victims, because there are two. And one of the things that we all are concerned with, where does it come in and where is the answer? Because the crime scene is screaming to us that this is unknown to the victims. They know the perpetrator because he or she got in the house without breaking in, no ransacking, no robbery, all of those things. So it's screaming to us that the victims know the perpetrator here. So all the scenarios without speculation, no call was made. If the attack was sudden or overwhelming, victims may not have had the opportunity to call 911. If they sensed something was going wrong, maybe one of them could have slipped away and made a phone call. A call is always evidentiary. 911 call can capture background voices, timing, emotional state, even the suspect. And what we had talked about before is that a third party call triggered this welfare check, which suggests concern after the fact, not during the crime. And we know all about the shell casings, and I had mentioned on previous shows, there are numerous identifiers here. And, we talked about firing pin impression, extractor impression, and there's even more if you look at this little meme here, drag marks and chamber marks, magazine lip marks, extractor marks. All of those are unique to the firearm that ejected this spent casing. That's actually, I always say spent shell, and I'm a little embarrassed that the media is using really the correct term, the spent casing. But that's my 27 years in the NYPD, calling them spent shells, not casings. You always want to use the street slang for it, if you're a real copper, But so all of these things are evidentiary, hopefully to point us in the right direction. And that's what we want to be. But something doesn't add up here, right? Something is not adding up. But that's where investigators come in. And that's where they sit around. What you can't really see in this meme, there's three detectives there with an easel talking about the case in front of them. And they're discussing leads on the case, what they have, sometimes what they think. And I use the term hypothesizing and theorizing. I used to have a detective in my squad. His nickname was Joe the Lip. And Joe was a big hypothesizer and theorizer. And I always used to say, Joe, stop hypothesizing and theorizing and start typerizing your reports. He didn't like that. He liked to hypothesize and theorize. But It's actually very important. And Phil Grimaldi, the retired detective who's on this show frequently, he calls it spitballing, sitting down with other detectives and talking about what you have on this case. But if you take anything away from this case or this investigation, it's that investigation takes time. It takes time, it takes effort, and it takes a lot of know-how. Again, this was earlier on when they thought this was a home invasion, but they distanced themselves from that. This wasn't a home invasion. This person was somehow allowed in, invited in, or had the code to the front door. So that's what we're talking about. And all the conjecture we're hearing about, was this a professional? Was this a hit? This could have been about any number of things. Could have been about money. Isn't money the root of all evil? We don't know that. But one of the investigative checklist things, and I'm sure they have a district attorney, assistant district attorney on board for this case, is to do a financial. What type of financial shape were they in? Were Monique and Spencer in? Did they owe a lot of money? Did they have a lot of money? Did they all of a sudden come into a lot of money? All of those things are part of the victimology, the background, the victim backgrounding. Some of them can tell investigators a great deal, And we all know these two folks, Monique and Spencer, were sort of people. They liked people. They liked inviting people to their homes. Maybe a lot of people had access to their homes. Maybe they freely gave out the code to their front door. Those are all the things that surely the detectives probably know the answers to right now, but we don't. We don't know the answer. What we do know is these two beautiful people, Spencer Tepe and his wife Monique, or Mo as she is nicknamed, were murdered about 9 days ago. And right now, no one has been brought forward to answer to these crimes. And luckily, their two children, ages 4 and 1 year old, were spared. The killer, for whatever reason, spared their lives. And thank God that happened, that the children were spared. So right now we have a crime scene. We don't have a lot of answers. As I said, victimology, their daily routines, their work schedules, social circles, financial activity, digital footprint, so important. Recent stressors or disputes. And again, this is not blaming victims. It's about understanding motive. Most homicides are not random. They're situational, relational, or transactional. And I know it frustrates the public when police don't release information. But to me, it's the mark of professionalism that the police department withholds information, because the press can, I said this numerous times and I get some hatred for this, the press can be your best friend or your worst enemy on these cases. They absolutely can help you, but they can also hurt you. When they prematurely release information, or someone in the investigation leaks things to the press that the investigators don't want out there, that can really, really hurt the case. As much as this case is horrific, and we all pray for the family members and the children that are left behind, this is a really good, strong case for investigators to work. And I will predict, and I'm not a big predictor, they will solve this case. Just be patient and watch what they do and watch how they come along with this case. Don't listen to all the online pundits, that really don't know what they're talking about. If you don't have the insider information, your predictions are just as good as anyone else. So, folks, I'm Bill Cannon from Police Off the Cuff. Thank you so much for tuning in. As new information comes new with this case, we will bring it to you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great day, and God bless.
One episode just ain't enough.